want to meet Todd for the first time, who I think is going to be my new hardwood supplier. I moved about a year ago and needed to find a new one. It's not always an easy thing. You would think that living in Canada, hardwood would just be readily available, but there's a lot of softwood, very little hardwood. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
Awesome.
No worries.
Pleasure meeting you.
Okay, you too. Have a good one.
Stay around. Now, I don't know if you've ever bought hardwood like this white oak before, but it's way more expensive than softwood or construction grade lumber. Definitely stay away from the big box stores, as their prices are through the roof and they have next to no selection. In your area, you should be able to find a specific hardwood dealer. They're generally pretty good with a huge inventory and a large variety of wood. But with that comes a large overhead and a little more cost than you might want. So if you're like me and you only do projects every once in a while, it's nice to find that one-off guy who buys lumber enough that he can actually go directly to the same source that all the other vendors are buying from. Hopefully you can find that guy in your town and save yourself a few dollars. This is the first table for me, and I'm already getting a little stressed. Never done a glue up this big. But that's it, cut to length, and I think we'll let this acclimate for probably a couple days, and then we'll get milling. If you've never worked with hardwood before, I highly recommend it. It is a wonderful experience, especially compared to softwood. And you don't need a bunch of machinery. And you don't even need a bunch of machinery to get one flat surface. I actually built my first bed completely with hand tools and flattened one surface of each board with a hand plane, and then used a cheap lunchbox planer to make the other side parallel. If it's your first time buying hardwood though, it can be quite stressful, and I've been there before. I've got 2 tips that will make that first time buying hardwood less intimidating. First is some jargon that's used to define the thickness of the lumber. Everything's referred to as quarter inches. For example, a 2-inch thick board here isn't referred to as 2 inches, but rather 8/4, because there's 8/4 of an inch. So if your project calls for 3/4 inch lumber, bump it up to 1 inch thick, so that you have that extra 1/4 inch for milling. So if you walk into that hardwood supplier and tell them that you're looking for 4/4 white oak, walnut, you'll be golden and have all the confidence you need. This is starting to look like a tabletop. We still have 1/8 of an inch to mill, but I'll save that for tomorrow or the next day. When you hog off so much material, you really release a lot of tension in the board. It's best to let that stabilize and balance out, as you actually will get a bit of a cup usually. One last thin mill will take care of that. I'm loving the white oak though. I love when you get that contrasting light and dark. You can see in some of these boards, the more hardwood is generally a little darker, and then the sapwood's nice and light. I love when it flares out on the edges, and I think I'm gonna be able to arrange these so they look really nice. I am having a bit of a hard time with this board here though. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's a bit of a red tint to it. I think what I'm gonna do is mill up and swap it out with one of these boards I had laid aside for the legs, and then it's time to square up the other edge with the table saw. Okay, second must know for buying hardwood lumber. Now, it's not sold per length like a 2x4 or 2x6. Instead, it's sold per volume. Naturally, you would think the units would be cubic inches or cubic feet. That would be too simple. Instead, we use something called board feet. Technically, the units of board feet are feet squared by inches, but we can make it a little more simple than that. We'll take this board as an example. 6 inches by what was 2 inches by 39 inches gives us 468 cubic inches. Divide that by 144, and we get 3.25 board feet. I know, nothing like mashing up a beautiful imperial system. Just before you go get a second mortgage to buy a bunch of hardwood, I recommend you check out the going rates in your area in board feet for some of your favorite species of wood. This will prevent someone from pulling a quick one on you when checking out. Lion King. Got all 3 kids to myself today, and no Lindsay to help. This is one of the hardwood dealer chains. Good store for low volume and finishes, glue, stuff like that. You like being goofy, hey? Oh. Maybe. One day. We'll see. Uh-oh. Where'd these kids go? All right, where's the glue, guys? Here we are. And this. So the glue up went well and wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I think the scary part is going to be trying to cut this circle. I really only have one shot at cutting this circle. I guess if the rudder happens to jump, I could always make the diameter a little smaller, but with 3 kids, we need all 60 inches. Okay, this is what we play for. Top is complete, and I must say there's something deeply satisfying about taking rough sawn lumber and turning it into something with purpose. Having said that, you can actually skip the entire milling process and purchase pre-milled lumber. You'll want to ask for your species of wood in S4S, which stands for surfaced on 4 sides. It's also quite common to see S2S and even S3S, which is just S2S plus a straight line rip on one edge. Now you may pay a small premium for that pre-surfaced wood, but it's a great option because you don't need a jointer or a planer. Okay, let's start the legs.